everyone, it's your friend Doris, the coder, back with another video. So this is a follow-up video, and I'll link the other one here somewhere in here so you can see what this is a follow-up to and get the part one. This is an update regarding the errata for 93662. I found in the beginning of the year, I think, that this code 93656, they had included 93662 as a reportable code with 93656, but there was conflict both in the table and in the description for CPT 93656. So you had two places that said no, and then one place that said yes in the form of the parenthetical. We've got an answer from the AMA. This is the CPT assistant that was published on April 1st. I think they did a March update as well, but before I could even get the March 8 update, I was going to air that. I thought I was airing this just now. I noticed that they did an April 1st update as well. They have clarified that 93662, intracardiac echocardiography, the add-on code that's used both with diagnostic and therapeutic or interventional procedures, cannot be used with the EP study 93656. Okay, so FYI, that is your ventricular code, your ventricular ablation code. So if you were using that prior, you've got clarification now that we're not able to do that. Go ahead and update your CPT books, 2021, 2022 edition, so you know how to move forward. There is another question that was posed that I think was probably more important than this one. I probably felt more comfortable not reporting 93662 with 93656 prior to them publishing this, although I appreciated the clarity that they gave. On page 765 of your 2022 CPT book, first paragraph on the left, we're supposed to be under the guidelines for the non-congenital code. So in 2022, when they created these new congenital cardiac cath codes, they actually separated the guidelines. So where we used to have one big set of guidelines that factored both of our code sets, congenital and non, they gave us a separate set of guidelines for congenital and separated out the non-congenital. In interventional cardiology, whether you specifically do congenital or not, there are times where you'll see both patients, right? Patients that aren't congenital and patients that are congenital, and maybe post-transplant and things like that. So it's important to know both set of these guidelines. Although I really appreciate the AMA kind of updating and fixing some of the typographical errors. Honestly, I didn't even catch the typographical errors. I think we still have an open question of, since the guidelines are now separate, and this is important for us to know as coders, I wouldn't reasonably as a coder with the new guideline organization look to the non-congenital codes for how to properly code something when I have a unique code set for congenital that doesn't refer me back to the non-congenital codes. But the troublesome language that I find on page 765 on the top left of that is they mention a condition, and this is the second sentence. It says, when the subpulmonic ventricle also connects to the aorta, for example, double outlet right ventricle, and all of the guidance that goes after that. This is the challenge I have with that. There's also an edit issue, I think, now that's going on with it because the thermal dilution is bundling with some of the other codes, and I don't fully understand that as far as CCI goes. But the challenge I have with this is these are supposed to be the guidelines for non-congenital codes, but the term subpulmonic is only used in congenital heart disease. And they talk specifically and give an example of a condition called DORV, double outlet right ventricle. That is a congenital heart disease. So it was my impression that the cath codes for 2021 didn't matter what the access was. So we didn't have to worry about whether it was through an intact opening or retrograde and all of those things that we had to do in 2021. It was just what side of the heart are they doing? And irrespective of how they get it, it's fine. Now we can use the add-on code 93462 in addition to the congenital cath codes if they did a transeptal puncture. So it seemed a lot easier, but what remains open for me that they haven't answered, and I'll have to pose it back to them again, is what is the intention of putting this statement on Page 765, congenital. Should we be looking for something in 2022 as it relates to a condition like DORV, which is really common in the congenital space? Should we be looking for the access in that? Now, feedback that I've gotten in some of the queries is we don't have to worry about access, but they've never circled back around to answer my question fully on why those guidelines are there for a condition that is exclusively congenital. Patients don't develop a double outlet right ventricle, right? The heart is either developed properly in utero when the programming is sent or it's not. So unfortunately, I have an answer, but I don't have an answer. With regard to the 93662, we know what to do. As far as those other pieces, we don't. We have to get used to, as coders, realistically coding on our feet and coding with the data that we have and really just doing the best that we can. You should always query if you have a question, but I can tell you, we've been all hit so hard with COVID. Sometimes the timely response to your question may not exist. You may have to wait a while, and you don't want to lose a claim because you're waiting, right? So you might have to code on your feet, as I say, after you've done research, after you've read guidelines. Always be able to interpret your support your own coding by understanding the guidelines. But there's some times that you will not find an answer for every question you have in coding, and the real world answer is you're just going to have to do your best. And that's all we can do. We're human. If we break it, we have to fix it. We can do that, but there should be nothing more expected of you. So this is the update for the 2022. This is as of April 1st. So this video is, you may also want to check it if you are not in the congenital space or in the cardiac space. There were some updates that they did with regard to some of the pain codes, for example. I don't think it largely changes anything. For example, like what we saw, the number of units and don't report more than once a day, that was already inferred by how they wrote that code. So I'm assuming that's why they did that. Anyway, I'm your friend Doris, Thecoder, with another video. You know what I say, like it if you do, share it if you think it would be helpful to someone, and subscribe and turn on notifications. I load as often as I do, but honestly, I'll try to do more, but I want to make sure my work matters. So like, subscribe, share, comment, tell me what you want to hear about, and anytime I can support, I will. Until the next video, I'll see you then.